Welcome to the Sunrise Project podcast. It's lovely to have you here today. I'm so glad you get to join us. We are here with Ron Gillaspie, and we get to hear his story. But before we start that, just a little word on us, the Sunrise Project, and what it is. These podcasts are an opportunity to hear from our neighbors, to hear stories, to get to be in process together, to get to learn from each other and learn together, which means that by the end of this podcast, we will be different in some way. We might have learned something about ourselves or each other that shifted things, or, down the road, things change. We keep growing, and it's a real gift to get to be growing together. It can be hard. It can be messy. It can also be fun and beautiful and wonderful. And we can laugh about it together. We were just laughing earlier about when things don't go quite as we expected, we can also laugh about it together because it's a part of the process. So thank you for joining us. And Ron, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for inviting me to the podcast. Mm-hmm. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and where we might find you out and about in the community.
Well, I am a barber, I'm a business owner, and I'm an educator. I work with youth here in the community that are incarcerated. And so you will find me basically at any one of those places throughout my day, actually, even. I spend time in the beginning of my day working with incarcerated youth at the Oregon Youth Authority here in Josephine County. Part of what I do there is I teach a barbering program, which is a state-run barbering program where they can actually get a license to become a hair care professional in barbering through pretty close to 1,000 hours of credits. And then they test on the state level. And if they're successful, they actually get a barbering license, and they can, use that license while they're locked up, or even when they get out back into the community, they can practice with the state license. So that, and I'm a business owner here, and I own Rogue Barbers here in Josephine County, and G2 Hair Studio, which both are large businesses in the community that cater to hair care and aesthetics and massage, and the barbershop mainly is about men's health care, hair care, and then the G2 Hair Studio is mainly family hair care. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I got to say, the style and quality that you bring is just, I remember when Rogue Barbers first opened, and there was just this, there was a community pride that I felt when I saw it. It just is such a cool place, Ron. It's just such a cool place. Yeah.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
Yeah.
We love being here.
Yeah. I'm so glad you are. Now we ask everybody this simple question because we hear so many different stories, and it's really fun to get to hear it. So why does race matter to you, Ron?
Well, race matters to me in terms of like it, I would like to think would always be perceived in a positive way. And so it matters to me that it is perceived in a positive way, and it would matter to me, it does matter to me if it's perceived in a negative way also. So, that's, and I think in many ways, it's, it could be perceived in both ways, depending on, the person that's visualizing it. Yeah. But that's why it matters to me, because I think it should always be seen in a good context.
Yeah. Can you talk more about that that positive way? I think of the word celebrate, but I want to hear what you mean by that.
Oh, well, like in a sense that race could be, a positive thing, and it could impact each person in a positive way, and it could impact our environment in a positive way. I think that that's a good thing. I think that's very important. I think that it's, a challenge sometimes to kind of adapt a more positive way of thinking, or take something that is in front of us and adapt it in a positive way. So yeah, that's pretty much how I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing it. This isn't a question that we've been asking as often, but we've become curious about this. Why does Grants Pass Remembrance matter to you?
Well, Grants Pass Remembrance is such a wonderful thing because it kind of brings us to a point, an individual may think of like points that they remember, and they are like more selective on what they want to remember, but with Grants Pass Remembrance, what it does is it actually takes things that are very significant, and it brings the awareness level to a point where whether you want to remember it, it exposes it to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really a wonderful thing, because through that, you can grow. And I think that that's one thing that Grants Pass Remembrance does, is it helps us to actually, look at items, like, for example, the history for Grants Pass, it has a background which some people would not like to remember, so it was very much an exclusionary state in the beginning, and many people of color like myself, were run out of town and excluded from society. And we have 3% African American here in the community at this point, maybe a little bit more than that. But with the Remembrance, Grants Pass Remembrance, what it does is it takes a look at that and gives us an opportunity to try to come to terms with that and look at it and say, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? And then create something that could potentially be much more beneficial to our community and our society. And, I think that that's a good thing, because if you don't really like acknowledge things, or things that have happened in the past that may not have been good things, it's easy to kind of bury it.
Yeah.
So we don't want to bury these things. What we want to do is look at it, and we want to create something more positive. We want to go back and go, you know what? That is not going to define what has happened in our society.
Yeah. Yeah. I love hearing your words around it. Thank you. Yeah. How long have you been in Grants Pass?
Oh, it's been since 2009.
Yeah. Where were you right before that? Were you in Medford before that?
I was in the state of Washington.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in the state of Washington, and for many, many years I lived in Washington. But before that, I did live in California for many years too. And decided to make Grants Pass my home.
Yeah. What do you think about Grants Pass? What do you love about Grants Pass?
I love Grants Pass. It's a place where I have. I call my home. I am involved in the community. I form relationships with the community members, and I think it's a very different community than what it once originally started out as.
Yeah.
Especially for somebody like myself.
Yeah.
I think that there's always room to grow. I think that there's more things that we can do to create more of an open and more inclusionary community. But I do love Grants Pass a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I have loved hearing your stories about as a barber, you get to sit and talk with people, and you have a fun spot too. You're right there, but you get to like watch the world go by as you're. And there's just something really sweet about that that profession where you get to be with people. You get to be with your neighbors, and that's been really fun for me to get to hear those stories of the way you're with your neighbors all day. You've kind of mentioned a little bit of this, but what has been hard about living in Grants Pass? Or has anything been hard?
I mean, of course, like anything else, there's difficult times, no matter where you are,
Yep. Yep.
Grants Pass is, no different. There's difficult times and challenging times, like some of the more challenging things is when, we have a state that has like a background that has been rooted in exclusionary practices and have adapted things put in place that would make someone like me not want to live here or be driven out of town, so to speak. So the things that I don't like about it is that when we try to normalize someone like me being here, it is challenging sometimes. It's not as easy as it say like it would be. Let's say like maybe someone living in poverty, where it's like you have two people. One is a person of color, and then you have one person that is living in poverty, and it may be quite easy to include someone that's living in poverty just because of the fact that they're not the same color as, say, the African American person.
Yeah.
So that's where it gets a little bit challenging, and where it may be something that we don't like, because it's when you can like have that equal playing field, or normalize a situation to where, there's a little bit more of inclusiveness and equality, then I think that's a good place to start. I think that's a good thing.
I'm really struck by the word normalize. I think that's when I have conversations about racism, and even on this podcast, we've done a lot of podcasts on how we can talk about race. And so much of it is normalizing how we can talk about race and how we can talk about racism and this morning I had a conversation with a gentleman that I'd met with. We've been in conversation before about Grants Pass Remembrance and the work that we do. And I was sharing about how what I would love to see happen is that in our community, it's normal that we have a food bank and that we want to be able to serve people that are hungry and in need in that way. That's something that we want to do, and that feels normal. And that it would be normal that we have these conversations in that same kind of way. That we want to grow in this way too,
Sure.
and that you could also get to that it would be normal that this is your home and how wonderful and that we're still in that process of normalizing.
Yeah, I feel that way. Yeah, and but just to have a discussion about normalizing it, is it's a wonderful thing, because some people don't want to have those discussions. They don't want to have those discussions about normalizing anything, that would be not familiar, or not, more along the lines of what's already existing. Yeah. And I think that to have those discussions now and to be making that a priority
Yeah.
is a really, really good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you. Pardon me while I peek at this. Oh, I wanted to ask you, do you remember the first time you heard about Grants Pass's history as a sundown town? And for some background, we've kind of referenced this, but sundown towns were, and this is not for us, Ron. This is for anybody listening. Sundown towns are communities that intentionally excluded African Americans, and often there were definitely other people of color in general. In our community, Catholics were a part of that group for a while. So Sundown Towns specifically was excluding African Americans, saying you need to be out by sundown, and enforcing that through threat in a lot of different ways. So when did you first? Do you remember when you first heard about our history?
I had heard about towns
Yeah.
that had, this kind of practice.
Yeah.
I didn't know Grants Pass was one town like that.
Yeah.
And it had to have been like maybe 4 or 5 years ago that it actually started to kind of surface that this was actually something that, was a, conscious thought or a way of operating. Yeah.
In some of the conversations I've had, we can get a bit distracted by the sign that used to be in town, but I just really like how you put that, a conscious thought or a way of operating, because I feel like that's more what it's about, that as a community, that was what was happening. Yeah. What was it like for you to hear that information, to know that, oh, this was intentional in this space? Because this had been your home for a while.
Sure. Yeah. It's like, when you grow up in, a society that, let's just say spends a lot of time, creating a certain image. Okay.
Yeah.
And I say town, okay, but with all reality, what I'm talking about is like the overall atmosphere of the United States and being more inclusive, and we are this is the where you come to be a part of, so being a U.S. citizen all my life,
Yeah.
It's very easy to kind of like not put a lot of weight on certain behaviors and certain things.
Yeah.
So I didn't really have any like outstanding immediate negative feelings towards this way of thinking.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I did not like it.
Yeah.
I don't agree with anything like that. I don't like it, let's just put it out there like that. But one thing that I will say is that, in society today, the past is the past and the future is now. We have short memories, so it's easy to kind of keep on going. This is a new day, right? So that's pretty much my attitude.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we learn from history. So how I feel about it is that it's a negative thing, but it's also something that we need to bring to light. It's not a good feeling. It's something that you don't ever want to feel again. But at the same time, how do you get to that point? How do you get to a point where, you can feel justified within yourself that you're doing everything that you can so that you don't ever have to deal with that again, and the people that, you embrace wouldn't have to deal with that again as well. So, so that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. I I don't know why this is coming to mind, Ron, but I'm going to share it anyway. One of the things that we've been doing with Grants Pass Remembrance is we've been doing community presentations. And we just went this last week to, I think it was Cascade Retirement Center, and shared with a group of like 10, 80 to 90-year-olds. And and we shared about, about our history and about our future, like where we can be going. And we had a time afterwards where we were asking, like they could share if they wanted to. So kind of collecting oral history and hearing their stories, not just about this particular part of our history, but anything they wanted to share. And there was one woman who, with tears running down her face, said, "I have lived in Grants Pass for 52 years, and I had no idea that we were that way. And it breaks my heart." And I think what struck me was it's so rare for me to be in a moment where I'm sharing this information and it's relatively new, and the person's first reaction is grief and heartbreak. Mm-hmm. Like I have that has never happened to me before, and I've had a lot of moments. I've had people that are, gosh, that's terrible. I don't want that to, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I've had people that are defensive, and it is, it brings up a lot of emotions. But yeah, I think I just wanted to share that just because I was so touched by her willingness to just simply hear it for what it was, I think. Mm-hmm. And, sure. and that, that compassion that she felt in that moment. I think it must have been compassion. One of the other things that as you were talking, I was thinking about was when we first connected, I remember how meaningful it was to you, the way in which we were talking about this history, that it wasn't just about what we've, where we've been and what we've done and how terrible it is, that it was, this doesn't have to be the end of the story, that we can move forward. And not only can we move forward, but we can also have this conversation in grace and in kindness and in an openness. But I wanted to hear from you in regards to, when we talk about a Sunrise community, that we've defined that as a community where everybody can feel safe, respected, and at home. And we talk about that as being the opposite of a Sundown Town. But what do you think about that concept, the Sunrise community concept?
Well, yeah, I think of it as definitely, we want to feel like we're at home. Everyone wants to feel respected, and everyone wants to feel safe, So, at the very least, that is, important to everyone, even when you don't agree with the person next to you. You want to feel like, you're safe when you don't agree with the person next to you. Yes. You want to feel, that you're still at home. This is still just as much your home, even though, this is like a unique thing for you. It is strange for you to have this knowledge now about something. And so just as much as one person may want to feel that way, everyone should be able to feel that way is what I'm saying, and so, that's what a community, looks like for me. Yeah. It's not just like, hey, you know what, we want our, opinion, about this to be heard. Okay. And it's okay if you don't agree with it, and we're going to still feel passionate about what it is that we're trying to communicate. And it's okay to not agree with it. It's a very big world, and we'd be in trouble if we all agreed on everything, So, so yeah, that's what community feels like to me, is everyone really having an understanding that, there's many different perspectives on, what a community looks like, what a community feels like, how people, may feel like in that community, what may make them feel validated in that community. The most important thing is that, each person have an opportunity to be heard.
Yeah. Yeah. That each person have an opportunity to be heard. Do you have any thoughts on what you feel like, what would it look like for Grants Pass to become more of a Sunrise community than it is today? What ways could we grow? I mean, you mentioned earlier, which is good for us to remember, that there's hardship everywhere and every place has a story. And the only reason we talk about Grants Pass, not because it's worse than the other places in any way, it's just that it's our place and we love this place and we want to know its story and be able to caretake it well and love it well and love our neighbors well. So do you feel like there are particular things that we might grow in, or specific things that we might grow in or change or be different as we grow into more of a Sunrise community?
I think that, only good things can happen as we, embrace being a Sunrise community.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. And I think that, when you open up yourself, your mind to different things, sometimes, it doesn't always play out the way that you may assume that it's going to play out.
Yeah.
Sometimes what you may perceive to be as a negative thing may not necessarily be a negative thing. Sometimes, it turns out to be the very thing that you need. So that's what I see happening is as we become more of a Sunrise community, a Sunrise town, you'll be able to kind of interpret other people's needs and ideas with as much value as we see our own.
Yeah.
And even though, they're not necessarily our first idea of, what we see as the norm, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not something that, is worthy, I mean, I think that, we will grow by that. I think that it's a beneficial thing.
Yeah. 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 I hear you there. We've spoken a number of different times about Base's work in Medford. Is there anything, and we might need to share a little bit about Base and what they do, but is there anything that they're up to in Medford that you would really like to see happen in Grants Pass?
Yeah, well, Base is such an amazing organization. What they do is for a lot of people that don't know is they create a alliance for people of color that maybe don't necessarily have that normal relationship with people like them.
Yeah.
Because there's so few people in our state. So what they do is they create a situation where, hey, you know what? We are going to support each other and we're going to create more resources for each other. And that's exactly what they do. And, they do that in law enforcement. They do that in community. They do that when they're celebrating MLK, when there's an opportunity to create like that support and that alliance, not just for themselves. Of course, they will directly benefit, but the community as a whole, people outside that African American based community. So, yeah, if we had more of that, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think that's something that, Grants Pass Remembrance has actually like been a catalyst with creating opportunity so that people can step into a supportive role. And it doesn't necessarily, limit those opportunities to only people of color. In many ways, it's a way for people from all ethnicities to get together, for, something that is, a good cause.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually met with a friend earlier today that was talking about how she was just out walking somewhere and a young Black woman ran out and said, where do you do your hair? And she that instant connection. And my friend had said, anytime I meet anybody else that's Black, I always ask, how did you get here?
Yeah.
and so they were talking, and the young woman had asked, where do we hang out? And my friend was like, well, what do you mean by, let's make sure we're on the same page, and shared that. And she was like, well, we don't really have any. She was like, I know 5 people on my hand. I know 5 Black people. She's lived here for 7 years. And the young woman was like, I know 10 people. Like I think she'd lived here for an even shorter time. She's like, more people than I do. So, but this craving to just get to connect, and there are ways in which we can, that within our communities of people that are like us, when we connect, there is a strength that happens that strengthens our whole community. And I see that craving. I think of the, you've talked about that before, like creating a space somehow in Grants Pass where there could be connection, and there could be that same kind of thing that Base has been doing in Medford, and that many of our neighbors go to Medford to get to connect. But what a beautiful thing to get to connect within our own community, and how that strengthens all of us.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's a wonderful thing, because the more, you feel included, or you feel like you have resources, all that makes a great community. I have a 64 Chrysler Newport.
Yeah.
And, that car attracts as much attention as the Batmobile driving down 7th Street. Okay. So, what makes it so unique is because you don't see very many of them around. And it's just a vintage car that, was so full of metal and so big, that people were just like, wow, it's like a dinosaur, it's just so unique. You just don't see a lot of that, around, But the amazing thing is that, everybody embraces it. Everybody embraces it. Everybody feels empowered by it. Somebody might say, you know what? I was thinking about buying one of those, but I don't have a mechanic. And, I was thinking about, keeping the one that I inherited, but no one has one like me. But if there's a community of people that have one, or a vintage car or something to that matter, then I will feel empowered. And maybe this is like a new life change for me. And so that's, that is really like a similarity that, people of color may find themselves in a community. We all do better when, we can all feel like that sense of community, whether we support ourselves or whether we support each other together.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, one of the other things that Base does in Medford is they're very intentional in their relationship with law enforcement in Medford, and an ongoing relationship and connection. And you've done some research on that. And can you share about some of that and if that's something you'd like to see happen in our community as well?
Yeah. Base is, they're very active in so many different things. And so that's what we're trying to do here. There's a gentleman that his professional line of work is he's an equity manager, and he's a friend of mine. and he works for a large corporation here. And but his job is to find equity amongst the workers there, employees. So that's what we're trying to do with people that are in the community, people of color that are trying to find a little bit more equity in equality with living here. Maybe they are a minority here. Okay, let's say the African American community is a minority here, 3%. Okay, so there's obstacles that we as a community face. Law enforcement is, we're experiencing a lot of disparities amongst different nationalities in Oregon. Because there's unfortunately there's just disparities among people that are being incarcerated, African American people, even the Hispanic community. So that's one of the things that we're trying to focus in on, like what BASE has done. They've created this alliance, creates more of a transparency and a hard look at what we can do to be more on the same page and raise the awareness level on how we're policing our communities, how we're interacting in some of these roles that we do. And it's a movement that is happening not just among the African American community in law enforcement, but as a whole with people in our community, in our society as a whole, with hate crimes and women that are victims of crimes, things like that. What we're trying to do is really give some clarity to, how we're policing and are we collecting data accurately? So this is a good thing. It's a health problem, actually.
And there's something too about in that space that is a support to our law enforcement. They do a good and a hard job, and having those support systems in place, having those alliances strengthens them and strengthens our community as a whole.
Absolutely.
It's such a good thing. It's such a good thing. Is there anything else so we've talked about this a little bit already. We all have different perspectives. Is there something that you wish your neighbors knew about your experience in Grants Pass, or just about anything?
Well, only that, I'm just, a working individual like they are, trying to bring something positive to the community. And, I care about the community, and that's what I would like them to know is that I care about the community. I care about, their well-being, just like I would like them to care about my well-being. And to be honest with you, I don't feel any different. I feel like my neighbors, seem to be very caring and supportive.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I'm very fortunate. Yeah. I'm very fortunate. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yep. Is there anything else you want to share, elaborate on from what we've talked about?
Oh, I just want to thank you, Gabby, and Grants Pass Remembrance, and Trevor for supporting us with the podcast, and everybody that's been involved. And if you don't know much about the Grants Pass Remembrance, feel free to take a deep dive and try to find out where you can engage.
Thank you so much, Ron. It's been such a gift to get to partner with you in the work, and to learn from you, and to look forward to these good things to come. These good things to come for our community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.